talk about outdated resources and how can we take best care of ourselves with type 1 diabetes, right? Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Vandevecht. I'm a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist living with type 1 diabetes. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how to identify a need for new strategies. Now, what you might be using could already be working for you, and that's great if it is. But if you've ever noticed that blood sugars aren't cooperating, or maybe your medical team is just not quite cutting it, they think you're doing good enough, and you're like, well, I think I could be doing better. The day to day is a lot more frustrating than I'd like. Then today it's going to be a fun chat for us. I'm going to make sure we got audio and everything. Give me a quick number one in the chat if you can hear me on the mic, and then we'll jump in once I know you guys can hear me. Give me a quick one. You don't want to participate today too. Help me to know you guys are alive. There we go. We got someone on Facebook. I love it. So we are going to chat. We got some ones. Cool. We're going to chat with some stories. I actually got off a call recently with one of my clients, and this individual had shared with me that one of the key components in our program that was most helpful for him was what we teach called a pre-bolus formula. So if you don't know, everything that I use is surrounding a blood sugar formula. So it's centered on that. Formula-driven approach enables me to have certainty in my calculations. Not just the insulin to carb calculations, but also my burn rates, my GTRs, my activity impact ratios, macronutrient profiles. Everything in diabetes is literally one giant math equation. All right. So all that to say, the pre-bolus is no exception. It has a formula as well. So we know how to calculate exactly how many minutes I should be waiting. And believe it or not, that's going to change based on the meal, the time of day, the surrounding activities, time of the year. So many things come into factor here. But this individual had shared with me that understanding and being able to calculate their pre-bolus formula was one of the biggest differentiators, comparing their previous strategies to their current strategy. And it was just a game changer. It's like, that's amazing. Is this like the first time you've tried pre-bolusing? And this person had actually shared with me that their previous endocrinologist had actually recommended that they do not pre-bolus ever. Like that was the medical advice, was don't pre-bolus. And when this individual asked them why, I heard it was good. They said, well, I don't want you to forget about it and go low, and it could get you in the hospital, right? And this fear of essentially irresponsibility of patients led this endocrinologist to recommend a practice that was not the healthiest, right? Because it was leading this individual and probably many of the other endos patients to see high blood sugars after every single meal, like spiking through the roof, 200, 300, 400, because this recommendation was there. This outdated thought process that lows are guaranteed if I pre-bolus, so I can't do that, right? So real quick, if anybody here has pre-bolused before, drop the word pre-bolus. I want to see how many of us are pre-bolusing currently. Is if not, and if not, then just type the number 2 if you've never pre-bolused. I got to see where we're at, because I want to break some beliefs if people are still being told that. Drop the word pre-bolus. All right, good. We got at least one person that's pre-bolused before. So for me personally, I pre-bolus 99% of the time. I'm not going to say 100, because there are circumstances that require we do not pre-bolus, right? And I can't get into medical advice and all that, yada yada. But the idea is everything with diabetes is dynamic. Yeah, there we go. We got some other pre-boluses in the comments. Cool. I'm glad that we're all here understanding the importance of it, right? But with the pre-bolus, even by itself, every day is a little bit different. And there are circumstances where we might consider adjusting or removing the pre-bolus. So yes, 99% of the time I use it, it's critical. It keeps me in range. It's like the reason I'm able to keep my blood sugar so smooth after meals, and I love it. But would I want to pre-bolus if I was currently at 60 milligrams per deciliter? Let's just give that as an example, or 50 or 70, right? The pre-bolus might not be as helpful if I'm currently trending downwards, right? So there are some circumstances where this all or nothing mentality of you should pre-bolus, because that client that I had, their story aside, most people come in hearing 10 to 15 minutes is your pre-bolus. That's it. There's no differences. And I've had other clients come in and tell me that their endo recommended they pre-bolus no matter what. they come into our program and they're like, well, I was at 60. And so I pre-bolused and then I ate my meal. And I was like, whoa, you pre-bolused at 60? And they're like, well, yeah, you're always supposed to do that, right? It's like, oh no. So on one side we have my client who was told never, right? All or nothing. They chose the nothing. The endo said, do not ever pre-bolus. It's dangerous. The other side, they said, always pre-bolus. No matter what, you have to do it. This is how you stay in range. And they were closer, I should say. But there are circumstances, like if you're currently going low, where you might not want to pre-bolus, right? It might look a little bit different. So understanding that these all or nothing mentalities can really put us in a bad spot, right? And with diabetes, understanding that the variables change person to person, but also day to day. Like I can tell you, my pre-bolus was different today than it was yesterday. Factors is that today's workout was different than yesterday's workout by a lot, right? So there's one key factor right there. So we got someone in the chat on Facebook, unless it's ice cream or pizza. See, everything's different. And it requires that we have this dynamic approach with context of the situation. Should I take my insulin 15 minutes early? Oh, we're having pizza. That's going to adjust the strategy, right? And so you have to have this dynamic formula driven approach if you expect to see stable blood sugars, because you can't treat every day as if it's the same, especially because we eat different foods, we have different lifestyles, different schedules, different levels of stress and sleep and hydration and blah, blah, blah. All these different things yield different requirements for us on a daily basis. It's crazy. Now, thinking about this all or nothing mindset, right? Let me get another one. It's different for every person. Absolutely. So like this all or nothing mindset, we think about, an endo saying, oh, 150 is a bad blood sugar. That's high, right? Because a non-diabetic wouldn't be that high. So you should be lower. And it's like, okay, but if we give that situation context, if we look at the surrounding situation of that number, maybe 150 was intentional because I was about to go for a run, for the next hour. And maybe I wanted a little bit of a buffer because I expect to see a drop in blood sugar. So it's not that this is good, this is bad. It's this is good because of this, or this is bad because of that. And an example I give my clients a lot is, a lot of people like to give if-then statements. If blood sugars are 150, then that's high, or then that's bad. But the reality is it's if blood sugars are 150, then it's bad unless I intended it to do that for exercise, or unless I don't know, had pizza. Right. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's not if then, it's if then unless. And we want the unless in there to give us context, but also to add that layer of dynamic approach to our strategies. Right. So as we're looking at actually an example from my own life where I used to go high after meals, right? I'd be coasting and then hours later it would creep up and go high. And my endo at the time would just add extra basil. At the time I was on Lantus and Humalog. My endo saw it creeping up, 2-3 hours after a meal, maybe 4 or 5. And she was like, just add some more basil, add some more basil, add some more basil. And before I knew it, I was taking almost twice as much basal insulin as I used to take. And I was like, this is wacky, And sure enough, I'd go low every single night when I wasn't eating. I'd go low whenever I didn't snack. And it was like, why does this keep happening to me? And there's this linear approach that my endo had where if blood sugars are high that far after a meal, it's the basal, right? But the reality is it could be the basal. It also could be the insulin to carb ratio. It could be insulin timing. It could be insulin to protein ratio. It could be insulin to fat. It could be stress, hydration. It could be lack of movement that day. It could be a number of different variables, but without context, who knows? Right. And it's so difficult to find our answers when we have this linear way of thinking. And diabetes in no capacity is linear. Let me check out you guys in the comments. I see it keep popping up. 150 is great for me who was a brittle diabetic. Once upon a time, they told me that I was brittle as well. So I feel you. Ice cream, pizza. Yep. Hi. Good to see you guys on here. So, understanding that there needs to be a dynamic approach, that we have to take things into consideration, something that will adapt with our lifestyle, with our choices, but also with our spontaneity. Today is Thursday. What if I wanted pizza on Fridays, every Friday, but I don't eat pizza the rest of the days. Well, all of a sudden, Friday is a different day than the rest of the days for my diet. So wouldn't my approach need to differ? Right? The pre-bolus timing, the activity, maybe the basal insulin extended boluses, all these things need to shift. But nobody teaches that. Right? No one helps us to understand that our insulin to carb ratio might look different if we lose weight or if we gain weight. Right? And we get set with these insulin to carb ratios too. That's a whole different story. It's almost like a set it and forget it kind of a ratio where they told me, hey, you're a 1 to 10 ratio. And then no one ever told me to change it for years and years until I asked about it. And I was like, shouldn't this change? My blood sugars are terrible. And they were like, oh, yeah, take some more insulin. It was like, who was going to tell me? Right. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever encountered that before, but the reality is that diabetes is different for everyone, but for each person, it can change day to day. Heck, it can change hour to hour, right? If I go and eat a pizza and don't dose for it, my blood sugars skyrocket to 400. That high blood sugar now impacts my next meal. Something to take into consideration. So, as we're looking at how can we adapt, I mentioned the if, then, unless. Like that's a great place to start building out those plans. If blood sugar is this, then this, unless this is present or not present, right? And building that out is going to be helpful for sharing with your team, your loved ones, or even just mapping it out for yourself so you have a decision-making process that is mapped out. It's a lot more clear and concise when you can organize it like that. But understanding that, these approaches, if they don't adapt, will lead us into frustration, will lead us into a place where we are unable to keep blood sugars controlled. And we're going to think it's our fault, right? We're like, why? I'm following the ratio. I'm following the plans. I'm doing what my endo told me. But the reality is we're using an outdated system and it's not going to ever catch up to us. So when we have this all or nothing approach of this blood sugar means that, or this situation calls for this, the reality with 42 plus variables impacting blood sugars is that every day needs to be a slight tweak, right? And this is why we use a blood sugar formula, right? Because with a formula, you think A plus B equals C. The equation stays the same, but the A, B, and C can change every single day without us losing our heads. So instead of every day being a complete clean slate and you getting wiped out at the end of the day and going, okay, well, today went fine, but I don't know what to expect tomorrow. It's more like, okay, tomorrow the equation A plus B equals C is going to stay the same, but A might be a little bit different, which is going to impact C because it's on the other side of the equal symbol, right? We're going back to basic algebra, I know. So understanding how our formulas interact with these variables is going to be a big piece of our puzzle. Does that make sense so far? I have been all over the map since they have started on Liam Jeff Rapid Meal. Lowered my long acting to see if my numbers stay above 90. Oof, that sounds rough. Someone says, yes, stress and anxiety make mine go crazy. Absolutely. And stress in and of itself, cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, all these things can have massive impacts on blood sugars. And that's just another thing that people don't really talk about. Right. So stress and anxiety, it can absolutely appreciate that perfectly. Let me read these comments real quick. Absolutely. Cool. So, walking away from today, understand that with your diabetes, there is no cookie cutter approach. A lot of times people think they found the answer. Oh, you have to follow this specific diet. You have to do these types of exercises. You have to, eat at 7, 12, and 5 and, follow all these rules. The reality is that you don't have to follow the rules. You just have to know why the rules are there so that if you tweak the rules, you know how to bend your strategies, right? If you change A, you make a small change to B and it still equals C. It's as simple as that. And, with my approach that I teach and that, inside of our programs, obviously we teach the 80-20 blood sugar formula where it is literally inputs and it allows us to predict where blood sugars are going to go. So we show you what A means, what B looks like, and how C is calculated for you. And it's because of that people are able to respond to a pre-bolus when they're at 60 and not have to worry about falling on outdated methods that don't work anymore, right? It's how I went swimming today. I started at 114 and I ended at 86. It's great. Set a new PR, felt really good about it. 2 days ago, I ran 4 miles after biking 16 miles. Like this is just, and same thing. I started at 109. I think that one I ended at 117. So that tight control is only because I can predict blood sugars. Like that's it. If I didn't know where blood sugars were going to end, I'd probably nervously push my blood sugars to 200. Like that's my go-to strategy years ago when I didn't know what I was doing. I would just push blood sugars high and let them fall back down and hope they ended in a good spot. Hope is a terrible strategy. I can tell you that from personal experience. I used to hope that I would be in range after meals. We'd go out for Italian food, and I was like, I hope this works. Now I've helped people set up their personalized macronutrient profiles, right? This is how I predict blood sugars through different types of foods. This is how I eat pizza and burritos. Granted, I eat healthier now than I did in college, but every once in a while, going out and having pizza, pancakes, waffles, ice cream, whatever it is. These are the fun parts of diabetes that people think are off limits because they don't have a dynamic approach that has that contextual element to it where there's that unless, right? If blood sugars are 114, then I go for a swim unless I have insulin on board. There's an example for you. That's going to alter my decision-making process, right? But these things are all built into our formulas. And in fact, I know we got a good time. We have gone through these programs, these iterations for years, taken hundreds of people through it. And what we found is that a lot of people focus on kind of three key areas. One is exercise. People see me training for a triathlon sprint, and they're like, I might not want to compete in a triathlon, but I want to be able to go for a run, to go for a bike ride, to walk my dogs without going low or without the fear of going low or having to stuff my face and, I eat more calories than I burn, right? So a big one is exercise. A second piece that a lot of people think about on that note is food. Like, how do I go out with family and friends to a restaurant that doesn't have a carb count? How do I do that? Eat the good food and not just order the side chicken salad, right? And starve. How do I eat my favorite foods and still stay in range? How do I go out to family events and have fun without hyper worrying about what's going to happen to blood sugars and going on the blood sugar roller coaster all night? That's the second thing that a lot of people work with us for. The third one, though, and this is fun for me as well, is really titration of insulin, looking at the volume and the timing of insulin. How do we match the pre-bolus times with the pre-bolus formula? How do we identify basal and bolus and correction factor needs, right? So that blood sugars do cooperate and level out and stay smooth so that it's one less thing to worry about throughout the day, throughout the night, and we're able to live our lives more freely. So if either of those things or any of those things, because there's three, sound like they might be helpful for you to get more information on or to dial in. A lot of times people that work with us are a bit more precision driven. They want that tight control, that confidence with their diabetes. If that's something that sounds like it would be helpful for you, we just announced to our email list a couple of days ago, we're actually opening up a new cohort for the first time in 6 months. The doors have been closed for a long time because it's just been full, but we're reopening it and taking 8 people through that process and identifying what is the catalyst for you. What is the best path forward that's going to be the quickest, simplest, but also the most long lasting, and setting up that formula for you so that you can have more freedom and flexibility in life. So if that's something that's even remotely of interest, like I said, there are only 8 spots, but we are going to allow everyone to start conversations. You're not going to slam the door in your face just because we filled the 8 spots or something crazy. But ultimately, we want to set you up with resources and or work together towards that goal that you have. So it might even just be, hey, here's 5 videos that are going to fix your problem and they're free, right? So I don't know what that looks like yet, but if it's of interest, what I want you to do right now is drop the word coach in the chat. And what that's going to do is that's going to tell me and my team, hey, you're interested in getting more info at the very least and seeing if this is something we can help with. And if we can, of course, we'll let you know that. And even if we're not the best fit, we're happy to point you in the right direction. I think 3 people this week so far, I said, look, we're not the best fit, but this other book or this other resource are exactly what you need. And they were able to get their customized approach even without us. So my ultimate goal is to help you guys and pair you up with what's going to be the best fit. So for some of you, that might be the formula driven approach, right? Like what I do, where I can predict blood sugars and keep them stable through any exercise or meal. And for others, it might be a more relaxed approach, and that's fine. But best place to do that right now is to put the word coach in the chat, which will enable us to start getting some more info to you and asking you some questions to see what would be the best fit. All right. So hope this was helpful. Ultimately, ask those questions. If, then, unless, start looking at how can my diabetes be more dynamic? How can I fill in the gaps with context from these situations that are not linear with diabetes? And how can I adapt to a new strategy that allows me to have more flexibility and freedom in my life with diabetes and not pull back just to make diabetes happy? All right. So I hope that was helpful for you. Again, if you're looking for more info, and one of us will reach out to you and we'll have a quick chat. Other than that, hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I see a bunch of you guys in the chat as well on YouTube and Facebook. So appreciate you guys. We'll reach out shortly. And I'll see you guys next week, every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm going to go for a walk. It's beautiful today. But have a great one and keep up the fight, you guys. We'll talk